Okay, Joey T. I'll certainly bite. Okay, for those of you who don't know what was just going on, I just finished watching a video from a series called the Cartoon Palooza that asked the question, are anime cartoons? Which, that's a very odd way to word it, but it's a legitimate question since this debate goes on and on in the animation community. Now, personally, I think anime is a type of cartoon. It is a specific type of cartoon. So essentially all animes are basically cartoons, but not all cartoons are anime. Just like how manga comics are all comic books of some sort. However, that does not mean all comics are manga. And I went into further discussion with this, and I can further confirm that anime is a type of cartoon in a podcast I was actually on for a spin-off of Cinema Royale. There is a link in the description. And in that video, I actually got a chance to talk to two very awesome people who are hardcore anime fans. And I even met one of them in person, Cameron, I believe. But regardless, we both agreed that animation is such a wonderful genre and cartoons are just all around great. But why do people have this discussion? Why do some anime fans get on their high horses whenever people call anime cartoons or vice versa? How come people get on their high horses when they call manga comic books or whatever? I did a lot of thinking about this, and a lot of that has to do with how animation and comic books were treated here in the United States. I speak, of course, during the early... not early. I speak, of course, during the late 1960s all the way into the early 80s, when there was a huge realization that the late 60s to the early 80s, a brand new device had taken over American households by storm, and that was the television. The television managed to give people information in ways that they couldn't ever experience before. Think of it as YouTube in its most primitive state. And because television was a medium of moving pictures, people eventually caught on that you can put cartoons on television. However, there was a lot of stress, and as many people can tell you, animation is not a cheap means of being a film medium. It is quite expensive. To get around this, Hanna-Barbera figured out that they could get around a big animation budget by using very simple shapes like with Yogi Bear and Huckleberry Hound, and very few character animations, and put more emphasis on the writing and the characters. And because of this, they were able to produce a lot of cartoons for very little money. But then eventually a lot of people complained that some of these cartoons were too violent and not exactly ideal for children. And so there was a huge restriction put on what could be presented in a cartoon. And if you think that the restrictions of children's entertainment is bad nowadays, or even 10 years ago, you should be grateful, because the restrictions on cartoons from the 90s to today is a lot more loose than it was during that period of time of which I speak. And of course, other companies caught on that they could produce other cartoons really, really fast by ignoring the writing process and ignoring stuff that could basically be considered clever. And they discovered furthermore that they could get more sponsors by making a cartoon out of just about anything. I really do mean it. There was a cartoon involving Casper the Friendly Ghost and Charlie's Angels in space, as well as cartoons based around celebrities, and of course the countless Scooby-Doo clones. Thankfully, such cartoons are very few and far in between nowadays. I mean, the closest thing we get to a Scooby-Doo clone is a Scooby-Doo reboot. But During this time, there was sort of a neglect to treat animation as a medium, as an art piece. And because of it, it became something cheap. It became something that is essentially visual junk food. It became something that was just for little kids who didn't know any better. And because of this, a lot of anime fans get offended when anime is called a cartoon, because a lot of anime has to tackle adult subjects or has more emphasis on the writing. Now, that is not to say that there are horrible animes out there, and that is also not to say that there wasn't any good animation between the time periods I just discussed. After all, we did get a few decent Disney movies like The Fox and the Hound and Robin Hood, and of course, Scooby-Doo is still considered a timeless cultural icon. And then, I don't know much about bad anime, but at the end of the day, you need to realize that it's going to take a lot of work to get people to accept animation as a legit art medium rather than a genre meant to entertain little kids who don't have any sense of taste. However, things are looking up. People are now realizing that there is no limits when it comes to animation, and people are taking it more seriously. And if the Academy of Films and people who are very sophisticated about books can't see that, then that's their problem. Comic books and cartoons are legitimate forms of art, and anime and manga are just spawns of that art medium. There's good of each, there's bad of each, but at the end of the day, it's still a world of limitless possibilities.